Welcome to Jen's Creation Station in episode 5 of Late Night Lattes and Crafts. First, let me apologize if you hear the wind howling in the background. We have 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts right now. But let's get on to our project for tonight. This turned out so cute, I have to share it with you. I'm going to have to hold it because it wants to keep sliding down. I decorated a tote bag with a cricket bug head. Let's move everything over to the craft table and let's get started. My cricket bug head was kind of an evolution from this very first bug head I cut out. I did not have Design Studio at the time, so I got a picture of it and I figured out the size of the circles, and the mouth was too thin and there's glue everywhere, and I thought the antennae were cute but they were too small, too thin. So my next step was this bug head, and he's just kind of too round. He needed to be more oval. So at this point in time I had a Design Studio program for my Cricut, so I started working with it. I had gotten a cut file from somebody and lost it, so I was starting from scratch. So let me take you through the steps of how to design on your Design Studio. I won't be showing you my actual Design Studio program. I'll just show you how I stretched and what size all the circles and everything are, so that you can do this with your Cricut and your Design Studio or Gypsy. This is actually completely made with Plant and School Book. You could do the same thing with George or any other program you have circles and ovals with. That's basically all it is circles, ovals, and parentheses from a font cartridge. Let's start out with a list of supplies you're going to need. You're going to need a 12 by 12 Cricut mat for your expression. You're going to need some freezer paper. I use just the Reynolds freezer paper that you buy at the grocery store or the hardware store, wherever you buy your canning supplies. Now my freezer paper, I cut it to 11 inches by 11 inches, and that way I don't have to flip designs. I actually use blue painter's tape and tape my corners, just like this. Just a little piece on all four corners, and then I don't have to worry about flipping letters or shapes. Last summer I made 2 Relay for Life t-shirts, and I used this method rather than flipping all my letters, and it worked great. To make my layering easier, I used a 1 1/4 inch circle punch, and I used a 1/2 inch circle punch, and I'll show you how I use those when we get ready to move on to our actual design. Let me say here, I have this cut file made up already. If you would like this cut file for this Cricut bug head, on my blog, on the right hand side, there's an email address. Please email me, put Cricut bug head in the subject line, and I will forward the cut file to you. Okay, now this main oval right here is a 4-inch oval. I cut a 4-inch oval out of white cardstock, and I just want to show you how that fits on there. What you'll need to do is stretch this oval on your Design Studio program. Let me grab a ruler so you can see, so that it is at 3 3/4 inches. You could stretch it and you'll end up with this very elongated, more circular oval, but not quite circle and not quite oval. That's the first thing you're going to need on your mat on your Design Studio. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is click on your weld button, because you're going to get ready to weld some circles. You need to weld the circle here and the green circle here. Okay? Now these eye sockets, the left green circle that you're going to weld to this is 1 3/4 inches. This green circle is 1 1/2 inches. Okay? This smile bracket right here is actually a parenthesis. That parenthesis is 2 1/2 inches from here to here. So use the grid on your Design Studio mat so you can choose, you can see how big this is. Okay, now because the parentheses always show up on your mat in pairs, you will need to hide contour in one of the 2 of these. And just kind of place it so it's kind of crooked. And this is about the center of it. Oh, a little bit more than 1 inch from the bottom of his face. The next thing you'll need to weld to his face are the antennae. Now this right antennae from end to end, ignore the circles for now, is, let me find my measurements, 3.5 inches. This antennae is a little bit thicker, and it's 3¼ inches. Now again, you're going to end up with 2 when you put them on your mat on your design studio, so you'll have to hide contour before you cut. Now just remember, if you get my cut file, you're going to see all the parentheses because you cannot save a hide contour on Design Studio. So every time you open this cut file, you'll need to hide contour before you cut on all 3 of the sets of parentheses. These little circles here are welded on, and they are a 1/2 inch circle, each of them. Just place them on end of the antennae. Now I'm going to go cut this out, and then I'll show you what I did with the eyes as I layer. Okay, here's my bug head all cut out, and like when you use the Cricut for glass etching, you are going to make a stencil, so this is what will actually get attached to your clothing item. Now I did t-shirts, and it was a lot of work doing the painting on the t-shirts. This tote bag was paint ready, and it was just super easy to paint. So keep that in mind. When you iron this onto your tote bag or your clothing item, don't iron all of it. You want to iron just around the edges, and you want to use no steam and a cotton setting, or just below a cotton setting, and just iron this on the object you want to apply it to. Now in the cut file that's available, there's a second mat I have set up with both these circles and a set of parentheses for the mouth that you'll overlay in white. Now on this parenthesis on the second mat, you'll need to hide contour for the other parenthesis. But I just cut this out of freezer paper. I chose instead to use a 1¼ inch circle punch for these two and just cut them out. It was just easier for me. And then you'll also need a 1/2 inch circle, 2 1/2 inch circles cut out of the freezer paper as well. I realize you can't see this very well, but I have my freezer paper ironed onto my tote bag, and he's a little crooked because I want him a little crooked on here. He doesn't sit perfectly straight on any of the logos. Our first step is going to be to paint him in lime green, and I use the Tulip soft fabric paint. It's a matte finish. This is neon green. It's kind of metallic. It's kind of pretty. And all I'm going to do is start squeezing paint on. But before we do that, I want to show you something. You need to put cardboard behind whatever you're painting. This is just a beer box. I work at a bar part-time, so I just bring home the beer boxes for the cardboard. Just put something behind there so it doesn't seep through to your other layer. Now I'm just going to squeeze paint on. It looks like a lot, but it really isn't. And you just paint. Now I did 2 layers on my little bug head that you saw on the other side of this tote bag. Just make sure you get all of your edges ironed down properly. And I was kind of surprised when I did t-shirts, it took forever for them to dry, the paint. And this took no time at all. And there's our first layer. We'll let it dry. Okay, through the magic of video editing, you haven't had to sit here and watch the paint dry. But I've gotten a second coat of green paint on my bug head, and now I'm going to remove my freezer paper. This is a little noisy, but I wanted you to see this process. Now some of it will stick, and you'll need a pair of tweezers probably to get it off. Just remember your paint is still dry, or still wet, excuse me. I may be lucky this time. Nope, I have a little point right there I need to get out. And some paper right here. You just kind of have to work it off. Just remember your paint is wet. And you definitely want to get this paper off when your paint is still wet. You don't want to wait until your paint is completely dry. Like I said, these tote bags dry in no time, so I only had to wait about 15 minutes between coats to get this off. we go. And there's our first layer. Now this does need to dry completely, so give it a good hour or two before we move on to our next layer with our white. Okay, I've allowed my green paint to dry for about 3 hours. One of the reasons you need to let your paint dry is so it's not sticky when you iron on the wax side of your freezer paper. Now, these are the circles I cut out with the 1 1/4 inch punch. These are the 1/2 inch punch. The middles of the eyes need to be green, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover those now so I don't have to repaint them green later. And these circles, I don't know if you can see it, but they're about not quite 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the green paint, from the first layer of paint. Now, when you're covering a darker color, it's going to take a few more layers of paint. I believe I did 3 or 4 thin layers on the other side of this bag for the eyes. So let's get started on that. I'm just going to squeeze my paint right on. And this is just the tulip white paint again. And just start painting. Now this is the same brush. If you clean your brush out, this foam brush, if you clean this brush out after every single use, when the paint's still wet, whether you're using the same color or not, you can reuse your paint brushes. I guess I'm kind of cheap, but as you can see, that layer went on real thin. It'll dry fast, but it's going to take a few more layers to cover up that green. So we've got our eyes done. This is 4 coats. Now they were slightly damp when I ironed this on, so I decided to cut so I didn't overlap that with the hot iron. I'm just going to squeeze some paint on. Ooh, there we go. Same thing on these 4 quick coats on this. It doesn't take much for this mouth, it's kind of tiny. First layer always goes on thin, and then from there you can put thicker layers on. And when I have those 4 layers done, I'll be back to show you the finished bug head. So here's my finished bug head on my tote bag. I now have one on both sides. I think the little bit bigger mouth and the little more crooked smile is even cuter than the other side. Thanks for stopping by Jen's Creation Station. Bye for now.